Hello, I'm Scott Woodwiss and welcome to highlights of the 2013 Thrustmaster Formula SimRacing World Championship. The mighty Nürburgring plays host to round 7 of the championship for the German Grand Prix. Nestled in the foothills of the Eiffel Mountains, the current Nürburgring pales into obscurity compared to the legendary 13-mile Nordschleife. Even so, the vast elevation changes and winding corners help provide the Grand Prix circuit with its own unique feel and challenges, with a number of high-speed sections and plenty of chances to overtake. Bono Huis put in another stunning lap to take pole at Precision Motorsport's home Grand Prix. Twister Racing once again took up second and third, with Samuel Lebert alongside Huis on the front row and Eduard Mallorqui behind him on row 2. Ivar Calames lined up 4th ahead of a strong showing from Netrex, with Patrick de Wit 5th and Dejan Kostadinov 6th. GT Omega occupied row 4 on hard tyres, with Jack Keithley out-qualifying standing teammate Rob van Starkenburg, as Martin Gosby elected not to race at all in Germany to preserve his World Series status. The top 10 was completed by an impressive Blair Disley for Biocross Positive and Gergo Baldi for Brem GP. Further back, there were more notable absences, as Morgan Morand, Filip Puška and Jerne Simoncic were all missing due to personal commitments. In their place came Franz Schneider in 11th, Mark Alberts in 13th and Ville Lapala in 15th, and Yannick Lapchan was forced to start at the back of the grid after his penalties from Silverstone. To the race start, and the entire grid got away cleanly, with the precision cars getting the best launch. Approaching turn 1, Huis held the lead while Calames edged past Mallorqui and then outbraked Lebert around the outside to grab second. Mallorqui also came under attack from Kostadinov, but held on as the field made its way through the Mercedes arena for the first time. Exiting the arena section, Huis was in command ahead of teammate Calames, with the two Twister cars and Kostadinov giving chase. On the approach to the Dunlop curve, de Wit challenged Keithley for 6th on the outside, but the GT Omega driver held on to the place. However, de Wit's late braking at the chicane several corners later earned him the position at Keithley's expense, while behind Ville Lapala received a nudge from Marek Godek, pushing the Finn down to the back of the field. While Huis and Calames broke away at the front in the opening laps, their sister teammates at GT Omega were struggling to make progress thanks to their hard tyre selection. Despite starting on row 4, Keithley and Van Starkenburg quickly found themselves falling away from the front runners, with Keithley holding station in 9th and Van Starkenburg dropping back to 15th. It was clear they were playing the long game in terms of strategy. Huis became the first to make an early stop from the lead to bolt on his first set of hard tyres. This left teammate Ivar Calames out in front, with Samuel Lebert in hot pursuit, as the Frenchman hadn't been able to find a way past in the opening laps. The pair took their battle to the pits, where Lebert's race was about to become substantially more difficult. While Calames' stop was trouble-free, Lebert stalled while trying to leave his pit box. Twister frantically got him restarted, but by the time he exited, he lost places to teammate Mallorqui and Kostadinov. While Calames had rejoined 6th, Lebert had slumped to 12th. As he'd done at Silverstone, Gergo Baldi took full advantage of his hard tyres to move into the lead during the stops. But as before, Bono Huis was quick to close him down, and Baldi did his best to hold on, but a dive into the chicane on lap 14 was enough for the reigning champion to reclaim the lead. Further down the top 10, a battle was brewing between Netrex and Twister, with Kostadinov at the head of the 4-car train. After some close running, de Wit made the first move, with a lunge inside Mallorqui at the chicane, which ultimately failed. Just ahead, teammate Kostadinov was finding it tough to dispose of Blair Disley, another driver who had benefited from starting on hard tyres. Eventually, Kostadinov showed de Wit how it was done and made the pass for 6th position. Then the fireworks began as Mallorqui's attempt to pass Disley a few corners later didn't come off, leaving the door open for de Wit to steal 8th at turn 3. Not wasting any time, de Wit immediately began to hound Disley for 7th, but the Australian wasn't inclined to give an inch and made it very difficult for de Wit to find a gap. Eventually, de Wit created one on the run to the chicane and slipped by into 7th place. Disley's loss of momentum allowed both Twister cars to pull level, but Disley quickly backed out and dived for the pits. This allowed Lebert to move inside of teammate Mallorqui into 8th, with Mallorqui conceding the place at turn 1. A few laps later, Lebert had de Wit in his sights for 7th, but just ahead, things were about to get a little more interesting as Kostadinov found his throttle pedal a little too quickly on the exit of Dunlop Curve and half spun. As he rejoined, de Wit found just enough room to squeeze past his teammate into the Schumacher S, and Kostadinov quickly fell in behind to cover Lebert. With all 4 cars running nose to tail down the pit straight, Lebert made a dive into turn 1 of Kostadinov, and the NetRex driver had to brake hard to avoid hitting teammate de Wit, losing out to both twister cars. There was more excitement at the same spot a lap later, as de Wit covered Lebert while Kostadinov retook 7th from Mallorqui. All 4 cars were now tightly packed together, and it was a miracle that no one hit each other. On the run to turn 5, Mallorqui was determined to repass Kostadinov and bravely attempted an outside pass. But Kostadinov once again lived up to his stubborn nature and held on for the next 3 corners until Mallorqui was forced to back out, heading towards the Schumacher S. The group continued to battle to such an extent that it allowed Jack Keithley to get involved, just as Patrick de Wit was making an error exiting turn 2. Quickly, Keithley made short work of de Wit, and then Mallorqui 3 corners later to take 7th. Through all of this, Gergo Baldi had made his first stop and shown enough pace to keep Bono Huis in his sights despite his much older hard tyres. The stop saw him rejoin 3rd as Bono Huis continued to command the race from the front ahead of teammate Calames. Kostadinov had come out of the battles on top in 4th ahead of Lebert 5th, Keithley 6th and Mallorqui 7th. Patrick de Wit had pitted, pushing Rob van Starkenburg into 8th, with Blair Disley 9th and Franz Schneider making an impression for Ghost Speed in 10th as Yannick Lapchan hunted him down. The field began to spread out a little more in the next few laps, but the closest battle on track was still between Kostadinov and Lebert. After a poor opening stint, Lebert knew that he was in for a long afternoon and was beginning to spend most of it staring at Kostadinov's gearbox. Despite following the Bulgarian for several laps and attempting to pass on a couple of occasions, Lebert just couldn't find a way through and continued to lose even more time to the cars ahead. As before, Jack Keithley caught the pair soon after his second stop, but this time had brought Mallorqui and teammate Van Starkenburg with him. As Lebert pulled alongside Kostadinov on the pit straight, Keithley sensed his chance and took the inside line as Lebert switched to the outside. The move worked perfectly and Keithley relieved a seething Lebert of 5th position. It took a lap and a half of consistent pressure for Keithley to then displace Kostadinov on the run into the chicane. Lebert had stayed close and decided to make his final stop to get an undercut, but couldn't believe his eyes when Kostadinov dived in to cover him. At this point, Lebert was wondering just what he had to do to get rid of the sight of the NetRex. Back at the front, there were no worries for Bono Huis as he continued to deliver another of his typically dominant drives in the lead. Teammate Eduard Calames made his 3rd stop at the same time as Huis and exited without any dramas. However, Calames was back in a lap later, much to everyone's confusion. It turned out a glitch had prevented new tyres from being fitted, meaning an extra trip to the pits was required. Ironically, he rejoined just as the ongoing scrap between Kostadinov and Lebert approached turn 1, and much to Lebert's misery, Calames slotted in right between the pair of them. Just as others had done before, Calames gave a demonstration on how to pass the NetRex with a straightforward move into Dunlop Curve and quickly began to create a gap. By this point, Lebert had to do something and finally got himself a chance towards the chicane. The move forced Kostadinov to cut the corner, but the 2 cars continued running side by side. Unfazed by it all, Franz Schneider decided to get involved and the 3 cars charged towards turn 1 together. Heading through the Mercedes arena, Lebert had finally passed Kostadinov, but hadn't counted on Schneider passing both of them to move into 7th. Lebert was desperate to retake the Ghost Speed and made a dive a few corners later, but all this did was give Kostadinov the chance to move by once again. The race began to march towards its final stages, with Huis maintaining a sizable lead out in front. The incredible Gergo Baldi was maintaining 2nd place, while the GT Omega duo of Keithley and Van Starkenburg were 3rd and 5th, separated by Calames in 4th. Eduard Mallorqui held 6th, but teammate Lebert was still getting headaches from being stuck behind Kostadinov. The Frenchman appeared to be losing his patience and mounted another challenge entering the Mercedes arena. With no luck in the first 2 corners, Lebert dived into turn 3 but misjudged his line and slammed straight into the back of Kostadinov. The NetRex didn't appear to have taken so much damage and Kostadinov drove away, but for Lebert it spelt the end of an afternoon he'd rather forget. With the final few laps counting down, GoSpeed's World Trophy Championship contender Franz Schneider was doing a grand job filling in for Morgan Morand, and looked as though he had enough pace in him to grab a couple of points for his troubles. A late stop for soft tyres put him just outside the points in 11th, but with fresh rubber, Schneider was able to quickly eat into the gap to the cars ahead. Sure enough, Schneider had the trio of Blair Disley, Yannick Lapjan and Patrick de Wit in his sights. With 3 laps to go, Schneider swept past Disley at the chicane to take 10th and quickly set off after de Wit and Lapjan. But Schneider's hard work was about to come undone. At the same spot the next lap, de Wit tried to make a pass, but Lapjan appeared to close the door. The pair touched, and as they recovered, Schneider couldn't stop in time and hit both cars, tearing off his front wing and cruelly denying the Swiss driver any chance of points. But at the front, Bono Huys was shaking off 2 difficult weekends in Canada and Britain to take a simply dominant victory at the German Grand Prix, claiming a home win for the Precision team and reaffirming himself as the championship favourite once more. Gergo Baldi impressed everyone once again with a wonderfully executed drive to claim his and Brem GP's best ever result with 2nd place. And rounding out the rostrum, Ivar Calames recovered well from his pit stop error to bring home 3rd and a double podium finish for Precision. Jack Keithley came back from a slow opening stint to finish 4th, ahead of Eduard Mallorqui in 5th and Rob van Starkenburg in 6th. Thanks to his defiant efforts holding off other drivers, the Anko Stadenoff took 7th with a damaged car from the incident with Lebert. Yannick Lapjan put in a great performance to finish 8th after starting from the back. Patrick de Wit struggled for pace in the second half of the race and had to settle for 9th. And Blair Disley grabbed a point for Biocross Positive in 10th position. On to the driver standings, and it's back to business as usual, with Huys reclaiming the championship lead and a 3-point gap to teammate Calames in 2nd. Keithley has moved up a place to 3rd, while no-shows from Pushka, Morand and Simoncic leave them 4th, 5th and 6th. Morand especially hasn't scored for the past 3 races and will need all the luck he can get in the second half of the season to remain a championship contender. De Wit sits in 7th, while Baldi's great results of late put him in 8th, 3 points ahead of Kostadinov in 9th, and Fredrik Nilsson remains in the top 10 but is in danger of falling out of it very soon, having not raced since Monaco. In the Constructors, Precision go into the summer break with more than double the points of 2nd placed GoSpeed, making them odds-on favourites to repeat their championship success once again. Another strong double finish from GT Omega keeps them in 3rd, while Baldi's hard work helps Brem GP into 4th. Twister are falling into the clutches of Netrex in 6th, while no points for Ash Racing today puts them 7th. Pescara and Biocross continue to scrap over 8th, separated by just 3 points, ahead of Fast and Speed and the yet to score Jasco Spain PSR. Formula Sim Racing now takes its 4-week summer break before the second half of the season begins, kicking off with the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring in Budapest. You can now watch that race live as it happens by going to simrace.tv on the 4th of August. Qualifying is at 4:15 PM GMT and the race starts at 5 o'clock. During this break, there's never been a better time to join the FSR Fantasy League and play for the chance to win Thrustmaster prizes. All the details can be found at fantasy.formula-simracing.net. You can check out our forums at racedepartment.com for more league information, and as always, you can follow FSR on both Facebook and on Twitter, as well as subscribe to this channel for further FSR content. We hope you enjoyed today's highlights. I'm Scott Woodwiss, and we'll see you after the summer break for round 8 of the 2013 Thrustmaster Formula Sim Racing World Championship.